No. I'm set, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome the members of council, staff, and members of the public to our December 11th council meeting and call this meeting to order. I'd like to call upon Mrs. Pearson for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Clark,
Present.
Councillor Hyatt,
Present.
Councillor O'Hara,
Present.
Councillor Patel,
Present.
Councillor Welsh, Deputy Mayor Field,
Present.
Mayor Loosely.
Present.
We have a quorum, Your Worship.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson, Clerk Operations Clerk, for the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral lands of the Chippewa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. The town of Petrolia is located on the lands associated with the Huron Tract Treaty number 29 of 1827. We express gratitude for the land where we live, work, and play, and we are committed to working respectfully with the land and the Indigenous peoples who have called this land home.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I'd like to request that council declare a conflict of interest either now or at the appropriate time and complete the necessary paperwork.
And Your Worship, I have received two declarations, one from Deputy Mayor Field and one from Councillor Hyatt that we can speak to later in the agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Okay, moving on, we'll go to the adoption of the agenda before you. And I'll just ask the clerk if we have any amendments to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have an amendment to the order of business this evening. Cogeco sends their regrets and will be removed from the order of business.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to request a motion, a mover and a seconder to put this adoption on the agenda for discussion. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Field. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as amended the agenda of the December 11th, 2023 regular session of council.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the motion before you? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Also, we have the minutes of a regular council meeting held on November 14th, 2023. I'd like to ask for a move and a second to put that those minutes on for discussion. Okay, moved by Councillor Patel, seconded by Councillor Hyatt. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as circulated minutes of the regular meeting of council held on November 14th, 2023.
Thank you. Any discussion, errors or omissions? If not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. We also have the minutes of a special council budget meeting held on November 28th, 2023. I'll ask for a move and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion. Okay, moved by Councillor Hyatt, seconded by Councillor Clark. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as circulated minutes of the special meeting of council held on November 28th, 2023.
Thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? If not, all those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. That moves us on to our moment of reflection. I'll ask everyone to please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. That moves us to the round table announcements. And tonight we'll start with Councillor Hyatt, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just maybe a note of gratitude to a few recent members that retired from town staff. So Mr. Menzies and Mr. Arns. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patel.
Just an enjoyable last few days with the parade, attending the parade and the lighting ceremony. Again, well attended, even though we didn't have the best weather. We were all warm on the inside, I guess. It was a great evening. A lot of work went into it, and it was very enjoyable.
Certainly was. Thank you. Councillor O'Hara.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all the 150 members and volunteers that helped decorate the float for the parade in the Santa Claus Parade. I attended the Christmas in the Park, and staff did a great job to transfer it from one venue to the other in a few minutes, I guess. And I also had a great time when I went to St. Andrew's Night.
Great. Thank you, Councillor O'Hara. We'll move on to Deputy Mayor Field, please.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I just want to reiterate the same things with Christmas in the Park. Larissa and Tara quickly took what could be a muddy situation and made it a great situation by moving to the market. The lights look great in the park, and I think our parade went off really well. So Larissa and Tara, Leah, the whole team, and all the volunteers, I just want to thank them all. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve. I'll also speak to that as well, but it was a great weekend. All right, that takes us back to Councillor Clark, please.
Nothing that hasn't already been said.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Bear with me, I have a few items. I met with the county committee on Wednesday, November 15th, and will continue to keep council informed. I attended the Ontario Municipal Engineers Awards Luncheon on Wednesday, November 15th at the Sunbridge Hotel. That was very well organized with a large attendance and very enjoyable. I also attended the Veterans Luncheon sponsored by the Legion, the Auxiliary Branch 216, and the IODE on Thursday, November 16th, 2023, and brought greetings on behalf of the council and staff of the town of Petrolia, as well as thank the veterans for their past service to Canada. Mr. Rick Charlebois, CEO Treasurer, was also in attendance. I took part in the Zoom meeting with the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority on Thursday, November 16th to review the 2024 draft budget to be approved at a future meeting. I would like to thank council and staff for a very productive, good budget meeting on Tuesday, November 28th in Victoria Hall at coming in at a 1.5% increase. I attended the county council meeting held on Wednesday, November 29th, 2023, and will continue to keep council informed. I attended and chaired the Lambton Creative Grant Committee on Thursday, November 30th at the County Administration Building. An announcement will be made on the grants at a later date. I also attended the St. Andrew's Night and Dinner at the Legion on Thursday, November 30th. Councillor Deb Patel and Councillor Ross O'Hara were also in attendance. It was a very enjoyable night and would recommend that all of council, if available, attend next year. The tree lighting ceremony, as previously mentioned, was a great success. Even though the event was moved over to the market and out to Fletcher Street, that was closed for the countdown on Friday, December 1st. The chili, hot chocolate, cookies, wagon rides, and angel tree was great, to mention a few. Special thanks to all the sponsors, service clubs, Larissa Ellsworth, Director of Marketing, Arts and Communication, Tara Wagner, Marketing and Special Events Associate, and other staff members and all the volunteers for their involvement. Congratulations to all the sponsors, volunteers, staff, and all the events held on Saturday, December 2nd that included the Farmers Market, Parade, Christmas on Film, Santa at the YMCA, and the Petrolia and Enniskillen Fire Department for their food drive during the parade. I attended the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority meeting held on December 7th, 2023, and will keep council informed. Their budget was approved, coming in with a 4% increase. I attended the Sarmar Community Mural Project ribbon cutting on Friday, December 8th as the chairperson for the Creative Grant Committee. It was a good event with nice weather and a real good turnout. And to finish, congratulations to Amy Robatelli, the daughter of Mary Thompson, who won first prize in the female division at the Ultraman World's Championship in Hawaii. That involved a total distance of 320 miles, 6.2 mile open swim, 261.4 mile bike ride, and 52.4 mile run. The best female in the world. And that's all I have. Thank you. Moving on to the update from the different appointed counselors on the different committees. First on my list is the Petrolia Youth Advisory Committee. And our committee members are Councillor Patel and Councillor Hyatt. Which one of you two would like to take the lead? Councillor Hyatt, go ahead.
Again, thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple updates. Last meeting, we kind of discussed a new idea for the Youth Advisory Committee in terms of having a talent showcase to host next year. So we have a spearhead in the audience tonight. This is going to spearhead that activity for us. So thank you, Ava. And secondly, just some discussions about health and wellness and how the committee can get involved in health and wellness around the community.
Great. Now I see there's a motion before you. Would you like to make that motion? Put that on the floor for the approval to endorse the Petrolia Youth Advisory Committee minutes held on November 21st.
Yes, please.
You'd move that? Okay, I need a seconder, seconded by Patel. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to endorse as presented minutes of the Petrolia Youth Advisory Committee meeting held on November 21st, 2023.
Any further discussion regarding those minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. That'll go on to, next is the Emergency Management Advisory Committee. We have Deputy Mayor Field and we have Councillor Hyatt. Councillor or Deputy Mayor, would you like to take the lead on
Sure.
that, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. We did have our meeting on November 15th. We had a very productive meeting. And it was one of Chief Arn's last meetings before he retired. Deputy Chief Clark is going to head up as a CMC, and we're working with the county to finalize some of our last minute things that we need to sign off and do. Yeah, it's very productive.
Councillor Hyatt, do you have anything you'd like to add? Are you okay with that?
Well, thank
Okay, I'll need a motion to put the minutes on the floor for discussion.
Moved.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Field and seconded by Councillor Hyatt. And I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to endorse as presented minutes of the Petrolia Emergency Management Committee meeting held on November 15th, 2023.
Any further discussion regarding those minutes, errors or omissions? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. That'll take us now. Next one is the Committee of Adjustment Property Standards. And our rep with there is Councillor Patel. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. We had a meeting this week. We had one request for a minor variance, which met all the requirements and was approved.
Good, thank you. And there's a motion on the floor, or there's a motion. Would you like to move that, Councillor Patel?
Yes.
Okay, moved by Councillor Patel. I'll need a seconder, seconded by Councillor Clark. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file Councillor Patel's update on the Committee of Adjustment meeting held December 6, 2023.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Next are the financial accounts. They'll be dealt with later on. We'll just continue on now to municipal services and traffic. And I'll ask Councillor Hyatt to give us a report, please.
Thank you. Other notes in terms of what's attached to the agenda here, just that the compost area has been closed for the season. Leaf collection is still ongoing with the end date for December the 15th. Town staff has been having some meetings regarding the wastewater treatment intake project with SEMA, with expect a report in March and April of 2024 for council. And lastly, probably something we don't want to hear, but winter maintenance programs are getting geared up in terms of snow events. So the town shall be ready should the snow fly.
Thank you, Councillor Hyatt. And also council all had copies of our actual permit report. As you can see, we are down compared to last year, but that's the same with many other municipalities. Thank you for that. Now, we have a motion here as well. Would you like to make that a motion, please? Moved by Councillor Hyatt. I'll need a seconder. Seconded by Councillor O'Hara. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and file Councillor Hyatt's update on municipal services happenings, the county of Lambton permit report dated October 2023, and the Brights Grove water treatment plant Q3 report.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. That moves us on to planning and development. We have Deputy Mayor Field and Councillor O'Hara. Which one of you gentlemen would like to take the lead? Which one?
Sorry, I was. Go ahead. Oh, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
We're still a very active committee. We have a lot of exciting proposals and developments that possibly be coming soon. A lot of them we can't really give a lot of details on yet, but it's still a very active committee, and things are kind of exciting for the town of Petrolia in the next few years. So.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Field, and that is exciting, and we'll just wait and see what happens in the future. Now, there is a motion in front of you there as well. Would you like to make that motion?
Sure.
Deputy Mayor Field, seconded by Councillor O'Hara. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
That is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and file Councillor Field's update on the planning and development happenings.
Any
I
further?
apologize. That should be Deputy Mayor Field. I apologize.
No problem.
I'll,
We're so corrected. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That'll take us on now to correspondence. We have items A to H. I'll ask for a motion to put that on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Hyatt. And right now that's to read A to H. Any discussion from council? Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question on Article H, the AMO watch file. Just the note in there about the mental health launching of the suicide crisis helpline and the social media toolkit. I'm wondering if that applies to something we should be putting on the town website. And
We could certainly consider that. Do you want to refer that to administration for, sorry, Mrs. Ellsworth, would you like to speak to that?
Through you, Your Worship, it's scheduled to start after this meeting. Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. All right. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and file correspondence items 11A through H.
Any further discussion? Deputy Mayor Field.
just maybe a couple comments. This seems to pop up from time to time. There's a letter from Mr. McCharles regarding GMP Tree subdivision project, where the last council, we purchased some land through bylaw to set up to go on to the next stage. This was an oversight from years past and is something that is documented with the property. This is also, without going into too much detail, the next developer is aware of it and is quite familiar with these costs. And these costs will all be recouped to the town when that development goes through. So there is a few questions there, but I just wanted to let anybody know that this has been dealt with and will be hopefully closed out as that next development goes through, and the developer is fully aware of it and is quite happy to pay it. So
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The bright side is it corrected a situation that happened 35 years ago, and it's at no cost to the town. All right. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Two. Correspondence. Any further correspondence? We have none. Delegations and presentations. A is the one that the clerk, operations clerk, had previously mentioned will not be available tonight, so you can cancel that. Next is Mr. Wade Babula from the Petrolia YMC for a presentation. Wade, please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to say thank you to Your Worship, your council, all town employees here for having me this evening. First time in this situation, so if I'm a little nervous, you know, here. I'm used to seeing so many of you outside of here, so it's a nice change here. Just coming to everybody tonight here. We're really thrilled to still be, to have this partnership with the town that we've had for the last 6 years. We think it's been really successful, and we're thrilled that we're continuing this for the foreseeable future, I'll say. So the partnership that we have with the town of Petrolia makes sure that we provide the highest quality programming and service that we can. A couple areas of focus and pride comes from the condition of the facility. Ask anyone that goes even just to fellow Ys in the area, and they'll say that we are by far the cleanest Y. So that's something that we're very proud of. The programs we run and the community events that we host as well. Many events I know Councillors Patel and Hyatt helped with the Yes Summit this year at the Y. So, that's one event that we were really proud to host as well. So we can go to the probably 2 slides. Perfect. So I'll start with our membership. Coming out of COVID, we're now into year 3, I guess we'll call it, outside of COVID. And our membership's up to 1,300. Not quite up to pre-COVID numbers. However, I will highlight that it is up 200 from last year, 100 over our projected goal as well. And our access rate is something that we're very pleased with. We're seeing 1,300 swipes a week, which is up 57% from last year. So the total number may be less, but the people that are coming are using it far more. And that's something that we are thrilled to see. I mean, anyone that walks into the Y these days can see that it's busy, it's hopping. We used to be able to tell members that we have, quiet times in the fitness center. That doesn't seem to happen anymore. You can walk in at any time and it seems there's at least 10 people working out. So we're thrilled to see that. 50% of our memberships, as well, as you can see the breakdown of each of our memberships, are our everything memberships, which is the top tier. So not only are people using the Y, but majority of the people are using everything that the Y offers. So we're thrilled to see that the town of Petrolia and its members are using all that we have to offer. So you can go next slide, please. Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, the Y is a charity as well as a nonprofit organization. So we do, raise money and try to collect donations, but it goes directly back into what we offer. So last year, 14% of our membership base was financially assisted. This year, it's 15%. So we're moving in the right direction. I think it comes out to about 200 members are using financial assistance. So, and we, the town makes a contribution each year to that as well of $5,000. And that contribution goes directly to funding families and members so that they can access the facility if finances are a barrier for them. We can also see there that 27 kids this summer. I'll get to that later. That's all right. We have another slide for it. So I'll just highlight a couple highlights from our programming. So obviously the pool is one of our biggest features that we offer at the Y. This year alone, we had over 2,200 swim lesson participants, up from 1,600 from last year. So we're able to offer more swim lessons and more people are coming in using those lessons. So we expect to see that number to climb a bit more as we try to offer more lessons and continue to keep looking for those lifeguards that are so hard to find some days. So our aquafit classes are very popular. We're offering one daily. A couple of days we got 2 in there. We're seeing consistent numbers across that as well. Our lane swim and rec swims, we're seeing increased numbers as well, averaging, I'll just say more than we were. It's hard. I don't know if I had the exact numbers, but more than we were last year. And we're offering them daily. We weren't able to do that in previous years just due to lifeguard availability, but we've got a consistent staff team there and now, and so we can offer a more consistent schedule for people to come and use the facility throughout the day at their leisure. So we can move on now. Fitness classes. So this number is up as well. We're offering 12 different variety of classes. We certified 3 yoga instructors this year. So I know yoga is something that a lot of people, look for, and we're happy to say that we're taking those steps to, meet what people are looking for in town. So those 12 classes is definitely expanded. One of the highlights we had this year as well, we received a federal grant, at the end of 2022 for a senior wellness program. This enabled us to have 25 seniors from our community attend the Y for free for that program. It was a fitness and social, so kind of, we got mental, we got social, we got physical, all tied into that. They came for roughly 15 weeks. Great success, and where you've been lucky enough that even without the grant, we're still continuing that program to this day. It looks a little different, a little less of the fancy frills that we had previously, but we've still got about 10 people coming consistently to that program. And we plan to continue that. So, we know that the senior population in Petrolia is increasing. So we want to do our part to ensure that they keep coming. Our Boomers Christmas party is this Thursday. If anyone wants to come and serve, maybe your worship, you'd like to come and make an appearance, but might be a turkey dinner for you.
Thank
All
you.
right. But that program has continued, initially started by the center and continued with us. And we're seeing an average of 40 people a week with that. So we're really happy to see that continuing. So. Our child and youth is another highlighted area we'll touch base on here. All of our summer camps were filled this summer. We have 270 total camper weeks is what we call them, and every single one of them had a kid in it. We have inclusion camps as well. So inclusion is when we invite children that maybe have special needs and allow them to have that experience in camp. So we do that through our March break, PA days, and summer camps, and every one of those spots has been filled this year as well. So we continue to see that moving forward. And if we can, we'll look to add another spot just depending on what we have for staffing, but we're thrilled that we can offer that. So leadership courses is something we offer at the Y as well, between babysitting and home alone. We've seen good numbers in these as well, continuing to add with that as well, help the youth of this town, get that early employment and that early responsibility experiences. So yeah, thank you. Community, and this is one we're real proud of with this. At the Y, we have a pretty central hub, and we are involved in many different events. And as you can see, this is just honestly a small taste of the partners that we have in the community. The town of Petrolia, obviously, we have a partnership with you, and we try to host different events with you. Santa at the Y being one. Family Day swims, we family day activities we always host with that as well. I know this year we've already been in discussion. We're going to be hosting a free swim once a month for Petrolia 150, so we're thrilled to be a part of that. The Rotary, we were lucky enough they donated life jackets for us. Optimus, we recently got a new stove that's going to help with our Boomers program and anyone else that wishes to use the kitchen. Kiwanis donated free swims all year for PA days and March break and winter break camps. So they've been continuing partners. Petrolia Community Fund, we've got a new wheelchair, aquatics wheelchair to help those that require that. Lambton County Library, they come and read every week. And LCDS, they come to a number of programs each week on a subsidized rate. And they come not just to the Game On program we offer, but multiple fitness classes. So this is just a brief snippet of the community programs that we are a part of. And, we're continuing to build those partnerships every week, every day that we can to continue to make the Y the hub that I know the town is looking to make it, especially with all the recreation projects in the backyard. So yeah, we can move on with that. So the Fill the Bus campaign, this was the one I was talking about earlier with the 27 kids. So our goal this year was $3,400 to raise. So Fill the Bus is a campaign we run in the summer where we try to raise money. This year, the competition was a pie in the face for all the supervisors. So I didn't get it this year, luckily, but I did get dunked in the fiery faces. So I guess that was the second prize. But we did raise over $4,000 this year, eclipsing our goal. We expect to raise more next year and continue to reach out to members of the community to help us send kids to camp. Those dollars go directly back to the kids and to the families to help send their kids to camp who can't afford it. So one more slide. So for 2024, as I mentioned, we're looking to be a part of any 150 celebrations that we can. We're gladly hosting the events that we can. The swims being one of them. Recreation Hub project is something that we're really excited that we get to be the host for of all these upcoming exciting things. We're seeing the construction daily in the backyard, and we know that it's only going to help our membership base when it does officially open. And we look forward to being a part of those opening celebrations as well and ceremonies. And lastly, leadership opportunities is we have some staff that are currently being trained in a few different things, but we're trying to get first aid as one of them. So we're hoping to be able to offer first aid at the YMCA as well. Something we haven't been able to do for about 4 or 5 years. So that's something that we can definitely look to bring and offer to the community at large as well. So with that, I thank you for your time this evening. That concludes my presentation. And
Yeah, thank you, Wade. I'm thrilled to hear that. And you're right, it's going to be a very busy area when we get all these activities over there. But thank you for the report. Before I open it up to council for any questions, I just want to recognize Joe, if you'd like to stand up maybe for a few minutes. He's the one that we worked with from the start, and it's a pleasure to see you back in the town. Thank you. Nice to be back. Anyway, I'll open it up to council. Any questions for Wade? Well, I mean, we're all thrilled with what you're doing and what's happening over there. And we certainly want to keep increasing membership. It's good for everyone. But I think when we get everything going and get the splash pad and the soccer fields, it's going to be a busy place. Anything else from council? If not, thank you for coming to address council.
thank you, Your Worship.
And I'll see if I can get away Thursday.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda here, we have Lisa Courtney from BM Ross and Associates Limited Engineers and Planners regarding the Town of Petrolia development charges. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So for the folks who were here last Wednesday, this will be a very familiar presentation, and I'm here to speak about the development charge process that we've been going through with staff all along. So I'm going to briefly go over development charges and the process around development charges, then get into the calculated development charges for Petrolia, and get questions and comments at the end. If you could forward the slides too for me, please, and thank you. Perfect. So development charges are a tool that's available to municipalities to allow them to recover capital costs associated with infrastructure that they've put in place to service growth. So this might be new infrastructure, like a new piece of pipe or a new water tower. And the general idea of development charges is that growth pays for its share, so that your existing tax base isn't bearing the costs of servicing future development areas. Development charges cannot be collected for operating or maintenance costs. They are limited to capital costs only. Next slide, please. So we collect development charges from new residential and non-residential growth. You cannot collect development charges from your existing residences. And development charges they're not a number picked out of the sky. They're based on a set of projects that I identified in a background study. Lots of rules around development charges that come from the Development Charge Act. And when it comes right down to it, development charges are a fun mix of accounting, planning, and engineering. Great dinner time conversation. And ultimately, any money you collect for development charges must go towards development charge projects. It's my job to calculate what's fair and reasonable and a ceiling for your development charges, but it's up to council ultimately to set what the development charges are. Next slide, please. So some examples of where you would collect development charges. Let's say I buy a lot and I build a new house on that lot. I would pay development charges. If I buy a lot and I put a new office building on that lot, I would pay development charges. If I buy an old factory and I turn it into trendy loft apartments, I would pay development charges on that change of use. If I'm putting an addition on my existing home, there wouldn't be development charges. If I have, let's say I have a 2-story house and I turn one of those floors into an apartment, I wouldn't pay development charges. Or if something terrible happens and my house burns down and I rebuild, I wouldn't pay development charges as long as I get that rebuilt done in a set amount of time. Usually 5 years is what most municipalities give for folks to rebuild. Next slide, please. So we calculate development charges for residential and non-residential growth so that residential growth isn't paying for non-residentials and vice versa. So you'll see non-residential development charges charged out on a per square foot or per square meter basis. And then your residential development charges are charged out based on the type of unit it is. So that might be a single detached family home, it might be an apartment, it might be a townhouse. Next slide, please. As part of the development charges, we have to consider the projects and where they're benefiting. And under the Development Charge Act, if we have specific projects that benefit specific areas, we can only charge that project to the area that benefits. Quite often we see this when we get into water and wastewater projects. And this is why we often have that rural charge and a different charge in an urban area. And that's just a reflection of the services, the difference in the services they have. So where I live and here on Kinloss, there's actually 5 different development charges that for 5 different areas that have different levels of service and different projects that benefit them. But most commonly we see the water wastewater charges in the urban areas, and then the rural areas where they don't have municipal water and wastewater services, they don't have those fees. Next slide, please. So overall, what the amount of development charge is generally reflects what projects a municipality is taking to service new growth. And generally we see in municipalities where they're doing lots of growth related projects. So if they have to expand their wastewater treatment plant or their water treatment plant, we'll see higher development charges. There are certain types of projects that benefit both the folks who are already here and the folks that will come in the future. A good example of that is something like a water tower. Typically you build a water tower for your existing community as well as some growth. And through development charges, you would collect the portion of that project that benefits growth only. So you're collecting a piece of that project cost, not the whole thing through development charges. Next slide, please. So our rule book comes straight out of the Development Charges Act. It sets out all the requirements for how we collect development charges, how we implement them, what types of projects we can collect for. It sets out the requirement for a new background study and bylaw every 10 years. Up until Bill 23, that used to be every 5 years. It also sets out the reporting requirements that municipalities have to follow once they put in development charges. It is important to note that development charges have been in place around Ontario since 1989, but the Act is seemingly constantly being amended. It's one of those acts that I have a Google alert on my phone and I get lots of alerts about that. So it's something that keeps us on our toes to make sure we're always in the know of the new rules. Next slide, please. So this slide summarizes the types of projects that we can collect for through development charges. If a project doesn't fit within these categories, you cannot collect for it through development charges, but it does include all your hard infrastructure, so water, roads, wastewater, stormwater, as well as some of the softer services like fire protection, library services, parks and recreation. Next slide, please. So as I said, there is a process for implementing a development charge bylaw. You can't just pick a number, put it in a bylaw, and now you have development charges. You have to go through a background study. And the background study looks at future growth, reviews projects in municipalities where they may already have development charges in. We would look at the old projects, revise costs, tweak where we needed to tweak. But the development charge background study also looks at each project and calculates the development charges on a project by project basis. That background study has to be made available 60 days before the bylaw can be passed. We have to have a draft bylaw available prior to the passage as well. You have to host a public meeting. We had that last week. And then after that, council can pass the development charge bylaw. Once that bylaw is passed, you have to issue a notice of passage, and that starts the clock on a 40-day appeal period. And that starts immediately after the bylaw is passed. Your bylaw now can live for 10 years. After 10 years, it automatically expires, for lack of a better word, but there's nothing to say you couldn't open up your development charge bylaw ahead of that 10 years if you so wished. Next slide, please. So most development charges are collected when a building permit is issued, unless your bylaw specifies otherwise. Typically, we see development charges in other municipalities if they're working with a developer and it involves water and wastewater. They may collect the water and wastewater development charges at the plan of subdivision stage. That varies from municipality to municipality. For rental housing and institutional developments, development charges can be paid over 6 installments. That's a relatively recent change to the Development Charge Act. And then there's also what they call a development charge freeze. So if a developer submits a site plan or a zoning bylaw amendment after January 1st, 2020, the amount that their development charge is based on the day they submit either of those applications. If 2 years lapses between when they've applied for those, either the site plan or the zoning bylaw amendment, their development charge would then be the charge the day they come in for their building permit. As I said before, the money you collect for development charges goes into development charge reserve accounts, and that money in the reserves can only be used for development charge projects. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of one of the newer rules that have come with one of the amendments to the Development Charge Act. So now there are discounts for residential rental housing straight out of the Act. And so it's 25% for any residential rental unit with 3 or more bedrooms, 20% for residential rental units with 2 bedrooms, and 15% for any residential rental units that don't fit either of those criteria. Next slide, please. So we calculate development charges as part of the background study, and the first step is looking at future growth and development, and then we look at capital needs to service that growth and development, and that's typically done through discussions with staff, looking at your capital operating and your capital works plan for the next 10 years, and then we determine what the net capital costs for a project are. We do have to subtract any grants or subsidies that you receive for any projects, and then any portion of a project that benefits existing development, we also have to net that out as well. So this next slide summarizes the projects included in the 2023 development charges. And this list was, as I said, developed through discussions with staff and an examination of your capital works plan. You guys have kind of a great plan set out for the next 10 years. You've done some really good work looking long term. So we're able to look at costs. So you can see we've got the total costs on the right side, as well as the amount that would be recoverable through development charges for each project. So the categories that we have included in development charges include fire protection, parks and recreation, public works, and then we have 2 water and a sewage project as well. And these kind of projects in your development charges are similar to what we see included in other municipalities. It's just some municipalities have more and some have less, and that's just the nature of what they have going on. So we do have some specific areas that will have specific development charges assessed to them. If you could advance to the next slide, please, and thank you. And these relate to the water and wastewater projects. So you can see on this map, we've identified development areas 1, 2, and 3. So development area 1 benefits from the Petrolia line water main expansion project, as well as the oil heritage water main extension. So they will be assessed for those projects. Development area 2 benefits from the Petrolia line water main extension project, so it will contribute to that. And development area 3 benefits from the Petrolia line water main extension, the oil heritage water main extension, and the sewage pumping station project, so it will contribute to that project. Next slide, please. So the total costs of the project identified in the development charges program amount to $11.3 million. You have $150,000 in grants that has been netted out. 4.14 million of that has been attributed to existing development, and that leaves 7.18 recoverable through development charges. Something to keep in mind is that, and I say this to councils wherever I go doing development charges, that's that whatever you don't collect through development charges, whether you choose to exempt development or don't pass development charges, you can't collect that money from anybody else but your taxpayers. You might be lucky to get a break from the government and get some money, but the money for these projects ultimately comes from your existing tax base if you don't collect it from future growth. Next slide, please. So this is what the calculated development charges are based on the projects identified in the background study. So on a municipal-wide basis for a single detached home, you would pay just about $10,500 in development charges. In development area 1, you would pay development charges of $13,846. And again, higher development charge there is a reflection of the 2 water projects that benefit that area. Development area 2 would pay $13,389, and development area 3 would pay $10,595. But the non-residential development charge in that area is $12.14 per square foot. On a municipal-wide basis, your non-residential development charge is 68 cents a square foot. So next slide, please, and thank you. So quite often, when we do development charges, one of the very first questions we get asked is, well, what are the neighbors doing? Can we compare to them? How do we rate? Are we more? Are we less? And I'm happy to provide numbers, but I do want to remind everybody that it's not an apples to apples comparison, because your development charges are based on the projects that your municipality is undertaking. Another municipality has other projects that they may have to undertake. And an example I use is we recently did the development charges in Lucan. And Lucan, if anybody's driven through there lately, has been growing like gangbusters for the last probably 10 years. And they've had development charges all along, but now they've reached the point where they need to expand their wastewater treatment plant. And that wastewater treatment plant is I think, $23 million project. So that is reflected now in much higher development charges there, where they went from about $8,000 to $33,000. But it's if you don't build it, you can't have more development, because you need wastewater treatment. So if you could advance to the next slide, please. We'll go over some of the development charges in your neck of the woods here. So in Sarnia, the rural development charges, and these are all for a single detached home for comparison, are just a little over $12,000. In development area 2, we're looking at $35,500. In the other urban areas of Sarnia, about almost $19,000. In Plimpton, Wyoming, a little under $11,000. In Lambton Shores, on a municipal-wide basis, they're about $5,500. In Grand Bend, they're about $9,000. And again, that's where we see the difference between the urban and the rural areas based on the services they need. In St. Clair, their municipal-wide development charge is about $4,500. In St. Clair, where they have a sewer charge, they're about $6,500. In North Middlesex, about $4,500. In the urban area, they're about $19,000. And then in Strathroy, between Strathroy and Mount Bridges, you're looking at between $29,000 and $33,000 for a development charge. And then in the rural areas, about $10,000. Next slide, please. So your proposed development charge bylaw is up on your website for the public and council to review. It will be in effect for a 10-year period and can be passed on or after January 15th, 2024. The current exemptions in that bylaw include non-residential farm buildings, nonprofit housing developments, and this is in accordance with the Development Charge Act, churches and cemeteries, as well as industrial expansions less than 50% of the gross floor area. That again comes out of the Development Charge Act. And then your second and third additional dwelling units in new and existing residential units. And that's again something that's come out of the Development Charge Act as an exemption. We also have included a provision to index development charges on an annual basis to the non-residential construction price index. And that's something that's permitted under the Development Charge Act and something we encourage municipalities to do to keep construction prices in line. Next slide, please, and thank you. So under Bill 23, municipalities are now required to phase in development charges. And so in year 1, you can collect 80% of the calculated development charges. In year 2, 85, in year 3, 90, in year 4, 95, and then from year 5 on, you can collect 100% of the calculated cost. So for Petrolia, based on the development charges calculated in the background study, year 1 on a municipal-wide basis, you'd be looking at development charges of about $8,500. So in terms of next steps of the development charge bylaw and process, the bylaw can be passed on or after January 15th, 2024. Once the bylaw is passed, we'll issue the notice of passage, and then that starts the 40-day appeal period. So that's my spiel. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Lisa. It's pretty heavy material, but I think we've already been through most of this before. But I will open up to council. Does council have any questions for Lisa at this time? Deputy Mayor Field, please.
Thank you for your presentation. Again, that was good. A couple questions. So the percentage that were outlined in there, we have the ability to change those percentages if we want.
Yes, you could charge less than, we'll use the 80% in year one as an example. You could charge 75%. But keep in mind, whatever you don't collect, you cannot collect from the next developer down the line. That money that you don't collect comes out of your general operating budget.
Can I ask
Go ahead.
Yeah. And can you explain, I guess, the process a little bit more when you said that we could reassess? Is that bringing yourself or a consultant back in to
Yep,
do
so
this?
if you want to reopen up your development charges, so let's say you have to undertake some big project and you want to get that in your development charges, you have to go through the development charge process from scratch again. So you have to do a background study, do the public meeting, wait the 60 days, pass the bylaw.
I got one more.
Yeah, through me, go ahead.
Yep, through you again. So if we wanted to, if there was, you saw the percentages in there for rentals that we could do. But if we picked an area like seniors housing, if we wanted seniors housing, we could make that exempt from development charges.
Yes, you could. Yep, council has that ability to do so. But again, the caution is whatever you don't collect has
Correct.
to come from somewhere else.
Just a follow-up to that. At what time can we do that? Like if there's a need within the community, and there's a need in the community right now for seniors housing, but if there was one that we needed more rental units, could we then do that outside of this process?
Yep, so if you had a developer come and say, I'm going to build 100 senior rental units, you could say, we will exempt you from development charges.
Okay.
Thanks. Councillor Patel next, I guess. Please go ahead.
Through you, your worship. So thank you again for your presentation. We've had many questions back and forth. Just one comes to mind. You mentioned in the Development Charge Act that there's been many changes almost constantly since 1989. As a council, for us to move forward with this, how do we project or approve based on what may be veritable or change so constantly when it affects a 10-year term?
That's a really great question that I can't answer. It's typically when they do amend the Development Charge Act, they'll have transitional rules that say, this affects any new bylaws going forward, and existing bylaws keep operating under the old rules. That was changed with Bill 23 a little bit. They included some backwards phasing in of the development charges. So an example, I worked in 2 municipalities last year that passed their development charges in 2022, and they passed them before all the new rules under Bill 23 came in effect, but one of those rules was backdated to January 1st, 2022. So they didn't think they were going to have to phase in development charges, and then they had to. So sometimes you just have to kind of roll with the punches, unfortunately.
Councillor Patel, go ahead.
So just a part B of that same question. So let's project that there's probably going to be changes that we may want to look at, or that would cause us to then reopen our development of charge. And then the cost of a new study, would that be a cost to us, even though it's a change from the act itself? Would we have to take on those costs?
Yes, unfortunately, one of the changes that came in one of the amendments was we used to be able to collect for the cost of doing this study through the development charges, and now we can no longer do that. So anytime you want to open up your development charge, that's now a cost that you have to bear, unfortunately.
And do you have an average cost of what that would be?
It depends on like if you're opening it up for one project, you can probably do it, for, I want to say between $15,000 and $20,000, just because you still have to go through that like you need the meeting and the 60-day process.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councillor O'Hara.
Just a couple questions through you, your worship. Is a retirement community the same as seniors housing?
It depends. Like there are definitions for that would make a retirement facility fall under the Retirement Home Act. And then it would be an institutional use rather than a seniors rental house. So that has to be specified in the bylaw. Like if you're looking for, like if somebody comes and says, I'm building a retirement home, that's different than a,
Oh, it's not what I said though. Like
Oh, sorry, I
a
must have
seniors
misunderstood.
Community, if it's called a seniors community, is that the same as a retirement
as a retirement home.
facility?
You'd have to look at it based on what services they provide. There's a definition under the Retirement Homes Act that says, if you meet these criteria, you're a retirement home. And if a seniors community didn't meet that definition, it wouldn't be a retirement home.
Okay, so in the retirement community where I live, we have our own unit.
Mhm.
We do everything except cut the grass and plow the snow.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be a retirement home.
So it wouldn't be eligible for,
It wouldn't be considered an institutional. But if it was rental, they could still apply, like that discount would still apply.
if it's rental.
Yep.
So you could exempt them.
Yep. Yeah, potentially they could
Okay.
be exempted.
I think
You
there's,
said you couldn't, now you say you can.
No, if they're a retirement home, that's an institutional use, and that's not exempt. Like that's not exempt or has the discount. But if it's a seniors rental,
If it's a retirement community,
so like if it's a retirement community and you rent the units,
Yeah.
that is a residential use, and it could be exempt from development charges if it meets the definition that the province is going to provide for affordable units, or it could be applied to this new discount that they have for the number of bedrooms.
okay, so you don't really know.
I think, yeah, I'm just going to interject here. I think that can be clarified if we need to later on. I think, is there any other questions from council? Deputy Mayor Field.
Just maybe a follow-up through you, your worship, Councillor O'Hare. We still have the right that if it's a seniors community to exempt them from development charges.
Oh, yes, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Council can make that decision.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you, through you, your worship. So maybe some more technical questions just on the study. So in some of the analysis, there was like called a post-period benefit. What does that mean in terms of, some look like pretty small assets, but it says there's a post-period benefit of $600,000, et cetera, where others don't have that. So how
Yep.
does that?
So that's based on your 15-year level of service. Under the Development Charges Act, we have to calculate the 15-year level of service for your soft services. And we cannot charge beyond that existing 15-year level of service. So anything that's beyond that is categorized as your post-collection period, and you would collect it in the next iteration of your development charges.
Councillor Hyatt,
Through you.
go ahead. Yep.
I have a few more questions, sorry.
And Lisa, please address the chair. Address it to me.
Oh, I
directly to him.
apologize.
Sorry. Thank you,
Go ahead.
through you, your worship. In terms of like the splits on the ratios of like 25 to 75, how are those established? Like some of the examples, like a street sweeper says it's 75% towards a new development, but I would assume that a street sweeper would be used in the entire town in terms of, there's X number of kilometers of streets in the existing town. So how do we determine that is the ratio?
Lisa, go ahead.
So it's based on, in some cases, for Parks and Recreation, the 90-10 split is, we figure that your existing population is as likely to use these facilities as the future growth, and that's 10% of, or sorry, let me start that again. That the growth percentage of, the population in 20 years is 10%. So that's how that split is. For other items like the fire trucks, typically you're buying your new fire truck for new growth, but it does have some benefit, and it's kind of based on what we think is a fair and reasonable split. There's no hard number to it, but we think it's reasonable that a street sweeper would be used, as you said, throughout the community, but you're primarily buying it because you need it to service new growth areas.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Sorry, thank you. Through
Yeah.
you. And like the Parks and Rec master plan, it talks about like parks are within 800 meters from facilities. Why don't like park lands get split out in areas specifically like area 1, area 2, area 3, when we know the parks are going to go specifically in this location or that location?
Yep.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Through you, Your Worship.
Go ahead. Yep.
So we don't split out the parks and recreation because we know people will go to parks where they, if they like the equipment at this park, they're going to go to that park. And it's something that the whole municipality can use and utilize, and it's not as defined of a benefit to these specific areas.
I think last one, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
So in terms of like the values that are put in, say we have $1.5 million for park, like, adding swings, et cetera, to a park. If we as a council want to adjust those numbers or think that those numbers may not be perfect, what is the process going forward? Do we have to redo the entire study to adjust that specific value, or can we say we think it may be more representative that it's $900,000? I just want to understand the process moving forward. If there's
Go ahead,
adjustments
please.
that we'd like to make.
Through you, Your Worship. So if you pass the bylaw and then decide you want to tweak the numbers, you're opening up the bylaw again and going through the process again. If you want to do it ahead of that, so kind of where we are now, it would just delay the passage of the bylaw.
Do we have to redo the like public open house, et cetera, for adjusting?
Council can make the decision if they want to have another public meeting or not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor O'Hara.
Excuse me, just one question, I have a problem with the fact we're being told by the province to build affordable housing, and you're telling us to make it more expensive. Because if you're gonna add $13,000 on to build a house, the developer isn't just gonna reach in his pocket and say, oh, I'll pick that up. It's gonna go right on the price of the house. Right?
Through you, Your Worship.
Okay, go ahead.
And the counter argument to that is if you don't have growth pay for growth, that your existing taxpayers have to pay for that, and that affects the affordability through taxation. So there's no perfect solution, and I recognize, it would be ideal if the province would come forward with some money to, help pay for some of this, but unfortunately we don't see that happening.
I just want to mention too for council just to be reminded that this company's been paid to come back with a report. That's all she's giving us. It'll be up to us to make any decisions. So, all right, is there anything else? If not, Lisa, thank you for coming
Thank you
to
very
address
much.
council. All right, moving on in our agenda, we have Ava Horwood. Would you like to come forward, please? And please state your name and address.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Town Council, for having me. My name is Ava Horwood. For those who don't know me, my address is 557 Country View Drive. A little bit about me. I'm the co-chair of the newly formed Youth Advisory Committee. I'm also your 2023-2024 Fair Ambassador. I'm also passionate about promoting inclusivity, community involvement, and mental well-being in Petrolia. I want to start by reading this statistic to you, which is unfortunate, but I'm sure won't shock many. 54% of Canadians who have mental health issues don't seek help. Now, this project I'm proposing will hopefully reduce that number. So I'm proposing to do an outdoor library in April of 2024 with books for all ages, as well as No One Stands Alone mental health booklets. For those who aren't familiar with an outdoor library, it's a small structure that will be placed in Petrolia with books that community members can come and take, and also leave a book when they feel like they would like to. So this library will be made by Ruth's Place program. Ruth's Place Day Program is a day program ran by Ruth Sire for adults within our community who have special needs. This library will be made of wood, approximately 2 by 4 feet for the structure. And the materials will be covered through Ruth's Place program, as well as No One Stands Alone organization. The books for the library will be first initially collected through donations, as well as future book drives that we can do in the community, pending on approval. Additionally, the library will be accompanied by a garden made by LCCVI Earth Heroes. So I'm the founder and president of the environmental club at the local high school, LCCVI. We did our community garden in May of this year, which is in front of the Blue Water Health team, and it's doing quite well. And we would hope to continue on with our community initiative and doing a small garden around this project, pending approval. Additionally, the library will have a mural on the back in honor of Tyler Patel, as well as members in our community who have been affected by mental health. It's noted that this library will be painted a dark green, the color of Petrolia. And the flowers that will accompany the the outdoor library in the garden will change each year to match the colors that Petrolia chooses for their flowers. So I'm here today to, of course, request approval for this project to continue, as well as the location. So I'm requesting that the location be somewhere that's accessible and public in the town, but also in walking distance to the high school, so that the Earth Heroes Club can do the garden around the library easily. In my proposal that's here, I mentioned that it's possible that we could do this by the Greenwood Arena. So I apologize, I don't have a picture of the exact location I'm thinking, but if you're familiar with the arena, it will be kind of near the bench that's located near the arena. Having this outdoor library in a public place will allow for more accessibility, which is important, but it will also hopefully deter vandalism if possible, right? By having it in a public location with potential security cameras as well. So now I hope that you can see that this project has a number of attributes regarding it's made by adults with special needs. It's incorporating youth involvement with the creation of the community garden. It's promoting literature and mental health resources within the town of Petrolia. And it's also incorporating art as well through the mural, which is, of course, we know Petrolia is well known for its artistic abilities. So I want to thank you for your time and consideration. Is there any questions or comments that I can take?
Before I open it up to council, I just want to inform council, we already do have 4 or 5 of these in Petrolia, but it's on private property. This one would be on municipal property. So there is some liability concerns. But I first want to say thank you for coming. I'm excited, and I'd love to hear different things, options like this, when you're coming forward to basically say, I'll look after it, we'll look after the books and all the work. But before I open it up, I think it would probably be in order to refer it to Parks and Rec to basically pick the location, because I think the location is very important. But I'll open it up to council. Is there anyone wishing to have any questions? Deputy Mayor Field.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very well done, and it is it's a great thing to have in our community. Just question with you being our fair ambassador, have you spoke to the fair board?
I did speak to Judy Kroll about this idea. She liked the idea, but I'm coming at this as an individual project. If you'd like it to be promoted as a fair ambassador project, that's certainly doable, but I believe that would have to go through the fair board.
I think what needs to be clarified is the arena does sit on our property, but the parking lot, part of it over and all of that is the fair board's property. So
Yeah.
depending on where it's located, but I think I think a motion to refer it to Parks and Rec. And if you want to go out and see if you can find where you think would be a good location and then bring it forward and then let the Parks and Rec approve that. Deputy Mayor Field.
I'd make a motion that we support this and send it to Parks and Rec.
Great. I'll
But
need
I
a
think it's
second,
important
seconder
that
for
we-
that. Seconder Hyatt. Any discussion on that motion? I'll ask the clerk if she can maybe put that together and read that motion so we're all clear before we vote, please.
Is that approval in principle through you, your worship, or is that support in principle or?
Is that support in principle? Is that okay? Or just support it?
Support it in principle.
All right. All right. Support it in principle.
So that would be for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to support the project in principle, and that this item be referred to the Petrolia Parks and Recreation Committee to report back to council with a plausible location.
Any discussion from council? All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries.
Your worship, do we have a second on that motion? I apologize.
Yes, we did. Was Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to address council. Good luck. Try and find a good spot.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we've got pleased to talk about some community announcements, recognition and awards. I'd like to ask Councillor Hyatt and Councillor Clark to come forward with me. But while we're doing that, I'd like to ask all of council and everyone to please stand for a few minutes and take a bit of a break before we continue on. So stand up, stretch your legs. Thank you.
Oh, are you doing?
The contest in the park and the chili contest has been going on for years. It's exciting. It's fun. The weather didn't turn out in our favor, but we still made it work. So anyway, it's my pleasure at this time to introduce Councillor Clark, and he's got the first award here. This is for second.
Second place winner in the chili cook-off contest, Petrolia Heritage Advisory Committee.
Is there someone? Congratulations. I want you to get in here. Hang on back there and look over here. Say chili. Want to say a few words? Just say thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's awesome. I will let the rest of the group know.
Thank you. And I had the chili. It was great. All right. Councillor Hyatt, please.
Hey, And the winner of the 2023 Chili Cook-Off is the Kiwanis Club of Petrolia and area.
Oh, yes. Move in here, hold put your hand on that.
I think happy to stand right.
Yeah.
You're too old.
You got it.
Thank you.
Not controversial. Okay.
Again, I just want to say congratulations to all the service clubs, organizations that were involved. We all can't be winners, but I think you're a winner just by participating, so thank you. All right, that'll move us on to the community announcement, community announcements, and we have the announcements before you. I'll ask for a move and a second to put that on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Patel. Any discussion regarding that motion? I'll ask the clerk to read that motion so we're all clear before we vote.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive as information the December 11th, 2023 community announcements as presented.
Mrs. Ellsworth, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing at this time, Your Worship. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. That takes us to the first opportunity for the public to address council. I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone been registered.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had no one register.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the public here. Is there anyone wishing to address council at this time? Please state your name and address, please.
Wade Dyton, 591 Country View. It's probably no surprise that I'm standing up here tonight. I was opposed to the development fees when council was still on, and I still am today. This bureaucratic money grab is nothing more than a red tape overstep. If you watch the news and there's something that is directly in contravention of what some of the top federal legislatures have put in place, they're trying to get affordable housing. I urge council to realize that there's a shift coming in Ottawa that will look upon this not very kindly. I said, just to add this is an upgrade to our already done in the last 20, 30 years to our lands. We've already got the sewers, waters upgraded. Why do we need this? So reconsider, look what you're doing and decide with yourself. Is it really necessary to add more fees to the houses?
Okay, thank you, Wade, for coming to address council. Before you go, I'll ask council, do you have any questions? Okay, if not, thank you for coming to address council. Okay. Please state your name and address.
My name is Sherry Hamilton. I live at 287 Evergreen Trail here in Tillsonburg. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for letting me address you this evening. And I have to stand here in favor of development charges. It's a very heated conversation, as you've probably noticed, but I see no reason for current taxpayers to fund someone else's infrastructure. Current taxpayers do not help a new homeowner pay their land transfer tax. Current taxpayers do not help new home acquisition, new individuals pay their real estate commissions. So why should a current taxpayer have their tax rate increased for the sole purpose of installing infrastructure that benefits those new home units? It's a big ticket item, but I think the current taxpayers carry the brunt of a lot of services that they don't even use just as part of a community. And it is the new homeowner, it is the developer who benefits from the development, not the individual who lives across town who's already paying taxes. So that's just my opinion, but I don't pay anybody else's land transfer, and I sure don't pay anybody else's real estate commission. So that's my thoughts on land transfer and why it's needed.
Okay, thank you. Just before you go, is there any questions from council? No questions? Thank you for coming to address council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is there anyone else here wishing to address council at this time? Mr. Blackmore, state your full name and address, please.
Gary Blackmore, 4005 Henderson Drive, Petrolia. Thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to address the committee this evening. I have just a couple of questions. Hopefully it won't take too much of your time. A couple of them are with regards to the proposed bylaw. And I'm looking specifically at section 3.15. I don't know if you have it in front of you or whatever. But 3.15, for example, states development charges imposed upon this bylaw. Whoops, my phone just did a flip. Sorry. Development charges imposed under this bylaw are calculated, payable, and collected upon issuance of the first building permit for the development. First building permit for the development. Using that language, if I'm going to do 40 houses and you approve my subdivision agreement, I'm paying 40 development charges before I ever put a shovel in the ground. That's what it says.
That's certainly not the intent that I'm aware of, but if that's the case, I mean, the bylaw hasn't come to council. We can certainly look at that wording, Mr. Blackmore.
But that's the purpose of the exercise here, for me anyway. All right. And there are a couple other items in that same section that I believe require attention. Section 3.18, for example, where it talks about the municipality, and my phone's doing lots of stuff here. Sorry. Oh boy. Talks about the municipality being able to exercise an agreement. It says that despite Council 3.14 to 3.17, Council from time to time and at any time may enter into agreements providing for all or any part of a development charge to be paid before or after it would otherwise be payable in accordance with section 27 of the Act. Because that's goes hand in hand with Bill 23 and the Development Act. So my question with regards to that particular statement is, I believe that that should be revised to read, upon agreement with the developer, the municipality may enter into agreements other than your standard agreement.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
one other issue. The other one was addressed earlier this evening by a member of council. Question was asked about if the council could exercise exemptions under certain conditions, which I'm sure are available to be done. My question is, if you're going to exercise an exemption to Billy Bob over there, and you need to give the same exemption to the other person on the other side of town, and that needs to be clear in the bylaw. In other words, there won't be any special agreements under those types of conditions. If I'm going to get a break to build townhouses, then you need to get a break to build townhouses. Equal and opposite.
I can certainly agree with that. I think to go answer your first question, I'm going to ask Mr. Charlebois to speak to that, just to clarify that, please.
We've already done that, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Yeah, we had that clarified today actually by Lisa. It's the developer only pays for whatever permits they take out. So say if I'm building whatever 50 homes as a developer, I go to the county and I get 5 permits. I just pay for the 5 permits.
Understand?
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, but
So-
we'll look at the wording and try and make it clear.
So you as a CAO and you as the engineering, wherever you went there,
Actually,
you agree that that needs to be revised?
The wording, yeah, we'll look at the wording.
Right,
Yes,
great,
correct.
that's great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
I just think that's fair, which is all I ever look for,
Oh, yeah.
is fairness. I have lots and lots of things, but I think we're going to have hopefully another opportunity to discuss this before a bylaw is
I think the
passed or
next,
not.
I think the next opportunity will probably be when the bylaw is prepared for
Okay.
council's approval.
Okay,
And that's a
and
public council meeting.
And will there be an opportunity at that time to discuss things in
You
more
can address
detail?
it like you are now. You can address, there won't be a specific, not that I'm aware of. There's no other specific public meeting required, but it will be at a public council meeting for approval.
Sure, great. Just, I don't want to stay here all night. Well, I hopefully will have lots more opportunities, as you mentioned. I have one more item that I discussed at the meeting last week, and I'm still not 100% clear on it. In the legislation, it states that when you put money into these development charges funds, into your reserve funds, that you must spend or allocate 60% out of each one of those categories on an annual basis. That's what the legislation states. And that's what the proposal that you folks got also states. So my question is this. If you are going to exercise a development charge, and I come in, I give you my $14,000. Part of that development charge is based on the dollar amounts that you folks have already decided need to go into water, sewer, power, lighting, storm, sanitary, whatever. So it's already been allocated. Once you take the money, it already has an allocated location. Right? So the question then becomes, in my mind, you've got the money. Now the legislation says within a year, you have to spend 60% of that. Now, what's the logic to that? It's my question. If you build 2 houses and you get $2,000 tied into water, for example, well, what's the town going to do with $2,000? Nothing. Nothing. It's ridiculous. And there's like 100 things like that in this legislation. So I would suggest that, or I would say that this bylaw requires a lot more groundwork, a lot more input from council with some guidance. Because it's obvious to me with the questions asked by Councillor O'Hara, Councillor Patel, and Councillor Hyatt, that there are so many things in this legislation. Well, the legislation, that's another story. There's no more things in this proposal that are not clear to the people that are going to make the final decision to implement it. To me, that is not acceptable. And it should not be acceptable to anybody on that dais. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Blackmore? If not, oh, Deputy Mayor Field.
Thank you, Mr. Blackmore. Maybe you have a big, long list, you said. It would be good if you were to give that to us ahead of time before we have a bylaw that's sitting in front of us. And if you've already had a couple things that we can quickly fix. So if that could be submitted to us.
Could I suggest, obviously I'm not a lone wolf here. I've been working with a lot of people in the background, or they've been working with me, however you want to look at it. Perhaps we could collectively put all of our thoughts, our ideas, and our concerns together and submit them directly to council so you can review it, maybe even have a meeting with us and get this thing resolved to the satisfaction. You know, Your Worship, I love Petrolia. You know that.
Yeah, I know that.
I hate to see anything happen to this town. And this is counterproductive beginning to end.
I just want to add, though, the meeting on Wednesday was geared to the public. What she received from that and the things that were discussed will be put together for council's consideration as well. So we're already collecting some of that information. I just wanted to be clear on that.
Well, I understand.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just if it's done fairly and comprehensively, this is a big deal, a really big deal. And we don't want to go down the wrong road. And I might add, I guess I was going to be quiet, but I'll go one more. Because it's been mentioned here earlier by council and by the facilitator, that the legislation always talks about the municipalities have to do this, the municipalities are going to do that, they're going to put in water, they're going to do that, blah, blah, blah. And they want to recover their capital costs and all that. Anybody that's done any work in Petrolia, been on council or on staff, they know that when a developer does a project in the town of Petrolia, whether it be site plan agreement or subdivision agreement, the town of Petrolia does not invest one nickel, not one nickel, into any of the infrastructure, storm, sanitary, water, power, gas, lighting, you name it, asphalt, curb gutter. They pay for all the meetings, everything. The town of Petrolia doesn't spend one nickel. And then you're gonna start collecting, you get building permit fees, 10 grand a house, whatever it is, all right? And then the developer starts building his houses. As soon as you get an occupancy permit, you start collecting taxes. But the taxpayers aren't paying for the maintenance of the roads and all that. He has to build everything, and then the town has to inspect it. You have to come up with a punch list. You have to come up with a partial acceptance. All right? And then that partial acceptance instigates a 2-year maintenance program. And at the end of that 2 years, there has to be another inspection, and everything has to be perfect, or should be perfect, before the town accepts it. So that could be 4 years before the developer gets to that point.
Yeah, I think we're pretty well aware of that, Mr. Blackmore. We understand the 2-year process. Is there, okay, Councillor Field,
One more
sorry,
question.
Deputy Mayor Field.
Through you, your worship, to Mr. Blackmore, you say you represent a group. Who's this
I
group? that you-
don't know.
I thought you said that you
Working
work with people, you represent, you're willing to sit down
I
with
work
this
with,
group. So who is
I
the
work
group?
with anybody on anything.
Oh, so there's not a
I
group?
have a wealth of experience.
I think that will stop. There's any other questions for Mr. Blackmore? Thank you for coming to address council.
Thank you very much, worship, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else wishing to address council at this time? Bob, state your full name and your address, please.
Yeah, my name is Bob Leeper. I've been developing Country View subdivision in Petrolia for the last 12 years. And I've been selling real estate in Petrolia for 30. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but there's 2 points I want to come across with. I'm in the process of getting some correspondence to council prior to your vote. There is a public misconception that taxpayers do fund development. I can only speak to my development. When I did the first phase of my development of Country View of 30 lots, I paid for all of the oversizing, all of the storm sewer, all of the sanitary sewer, all of the deep services to develop the entire project, which was 189 lots. To the best of my knowledge, there is absolutely no cost downloaded to anyone else as a taxpayer, and that's the way it should be. Now, we're as a developer, we're in development, hopefully to make money, and that shouldn't be a burden to any other taxpayer. So I think that's a public misconception, and I hope that the councillors are aware that we do pay for all of our own cost. Even lawyers' fees for the town, engineering review fees, stop signs, everything. So that's an important thing that the public doesn't always realize. The other thing is there is a lot of information here. I've taken a look at the report. I did go to the open house on Wednesday. I think BM Ross did an excellent detailed report. I think there should be, Councillor Hyatt raised some really good questions. Are all of these wish list items proper and realistic? Do we need a one point something million dollars for park equipment? That's a pretty expensive swing set. When I did my second phase of the subdivision, I gave the town enough parkland for my entire 100 and so many project. I serviced it, sodded it, graded it, did everything for, I think I spent $40,000. That's fine. Those are the rules. But should the new home buyers have a burden of hundreds of thousands of dollars to put playground equipment in it when that may not even be the case? I don't want to go into all of that. 2 points. One, I think there's a public misconception that taxpayers pay the burden for our projects, which they don't. 2, I ask council not to rush into this decision. And if you feel that there is enough questions, give us more time before you make a decision. This is an extremely, you're talking potentially $7 million that you'd like to get. I'd also like to remind you that new home business has stalled. We are struggling. Petrolia has had very, very little growth in the last few years in single-family residential units. That is a bigger concern than development fees. Give us more time. I think you're going to get more input to make a decision, and I just ask for the time that I believe this is credited to.
All right, I can remind council, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Pearson, I think the proposed approval of the bylaws, the first council meeting in February. Is that correct?
As my understanding, your worship, yes.
Okay, I mean, it's up to council if they want to change that, but anyway, do you have any questions for Mr. Leeper? No, thank you for
May
coming.
I make one more comment?
Sure, go ahead.
I think January 15th is too fast.
No, February.
No, January 15th. Is
No.
it January, February?
No, that wasn't confirmed through your worship. His worship just asked me if it would be the first meeting in February, and I confirmed as such.
Oh, so it wouldn't be, the first it could be passed would be February?
The first that it could be passed by legislation is January 15th.
Okay,
Council doesn't have this slated to come forward until the first meeting of February.
excellent. Even that extra month is worth, I think it's well worth the time. My understanding was that it could be passed January 15th. I just hope that that's not the case.
Legislatively advised through your worship, that is the first available date. That
Okay.
is not the schedule of implementation or presentation.
All right, thank you.
All right. Councilor O'Hara.
Just a quick comment through you, your worship, it was stated about the taxpayers and so forth, whether it's existing or new. People that buy a new house are going to pay taxes for probably 10, 12 years, or probably more. And all those taxes, the bulk of them are going to go to existing areas that have houses now, because they're the ones that need streets replaced, sidewalks added. Now, as a developer, you got to put the sidewalks in when you build. So for 10, 12, 15 years, the only thing they're going to get from their taxes is say maybe some grass cutting in the parks or the snow removed in the winter. That's all I'm going to
It continues on. You've got water, sewer, all those other things.
Yeah,
Go
may I
ahead,
speak to that?
Mr. Leeper.
One of the questions I had for the BM Ross consultant is she verified that due to the quality of materials, the changes in engineering practices, the pipes, the underground, they're lasting for 75 plus years. Louis Britannic subdivision has been going for 35 years. They've never, to the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong, they haven't touched anything. They haven't even resurfaced a road. So we believe, and I'm not going to get into a whole, we believe what we're doing is, with the fact that a lot of this work doesn't need to be done, and the new homeowner, based on assessment, which is a fair process, paying the high end of the taxes, we're subsidizing the rest of the town. If you had a town without growth, you'd be in trouble. Your taxes would go up because all these other places in town that need of all this extra money that we're putting into the pot would use it all up. So growth, the town benefits in multiple ways from the fact that we don't require a lot of maintenance for a long period of time, and we're already paying the high level of taxes, based on house assessment in one of the highest taxed areas in the county.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from council? If not, thank you, Mr. Leeper, for
welcome.
coming to address council. No, I think you've already had your turn, Mr. Blackmore. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? No. If not, we'll move on. We'll go to the financial accounts.
In your worship, I do have a declared conflict of interest from Deputy Mayor Field.
Okay, if he'll just step back, he will not discuss or vote on the matter. I'll ask for a move and a second to put those accounts on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor O'Hara, seconded by Councillor Hyatt. Any discussion regarding those accounts before you? I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you. That is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive as information the November 8th, 2023 to December 5th, 2023 financial accounts as circulated.
Any discussion on those accounts? If not, all those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, that'll move us on to item number 17. Deputy Mayor Field is back in his chair. And under finance, we have a report from Jessica McNally, Asset Management Coordinator, regarding the asset retirement obligation policy. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Patel, seconded by Councillor Hyatt. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to adopt the report of the asset management coordinator dated December 11th, 2023 regarding asset retirement obligations policy.
Mrs. McNally, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we got a report from Mr. Rick Charlebois, CAO Treasurer, regarding the final process of the Town of Petrolia Strategic Plan. I'll ask for a motion to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Hyatt. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that would be for the council of the town of Petrolia to adopt the report of the CAO Treasurer dated the 11th of December, 2023 regarding council's approval for the town of Petrolia's 2024 to 2028 strategic plan.
I'll ask Mr. Charlebois, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, Your Worship, I'd just like to mention that we have our consultant. This is Miss Kate Graham. She's on the line and she can respond to any questions.
Okay. Any questions from council? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to administration, we have a report from Mrs. Mandy Pearson, Clerk Operations Clerk, regarding a change of a council meeting date. And you've got I'll get a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor O'Hara, seconded by Deputy Mayor Field, and that's regarding changing the date from January 8th to the 15th. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive the report as presented by Mandy Pearson, Clerk Operations Clerk, regarding an update to the 2024 calendar dates, and that the January 8th, 2024 council be rescheduled to take place on January 15th, 2024.
Any discussion from council? If not, all those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. That moves us on to Marketing, Arts and Communications. We have a report from Larissa Ellsworth, Director of Marketing, Arts and Communication, regarding the Victoria Hall Facility Addition. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor O'Hara, seconded by Councillor Patel. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to endorse the report of the Director of Marketing, Arts and Communications dated December 11th, 2023 regarding Victoria Hall facility addition requests, and that the Victoria Playhouse Petrolia team be directed to launch a capital fundraising plan, and that once all funds required and compiled, and once all funds are required and compiled, the staff return to council for approval to proceed for tender.
Thank you. Mrs. Ellsworth, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the report speaks for the need.
Okay.
And I would be more than pleased to illustrate said need if anyone would like to take a tour anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ellsworth. And I think I certainly understand the need, and we've all seen the drawings. I think it's a great project. I wish them the best, and we'll go from there. Any questions from council?
We did, Your Worship.
All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. That'll move us on to section 239(2) of the Act regarding going into a closed session or in camera. This is in regards to personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and property 03/2023, Mr. Ken Melanson, Communication Council Subdivision Developer. I'll ask for a mover and seconder to go into camera, please. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Field. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to break from open session and move to closed session.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. We'll go into closed session.
We do.